Welcome to PhD with Women on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack Delivered will be by our guests, Jessica McQuoid and Kate Menting. Topic of today's discussion is how to improve sexuality education for healthy future. Episode 53 starts here if my cat allows me. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on it, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my motto. And empathy is critical when you are improving sexuality education for healthy future. Did you know that only 34% of young people around the world can demonstrate accurate knowledge of HIV prevention and transmission? 2 out of 3 girls in some countries have no idea of what is happening to them when they begin menstruating. These are some of the reasons why there is an urgent need for quality, comprehensive sexuality education. This cat actually didn't know about sexuality education, and she had babies when she was 6 months old. The Women on It community always stands in taking care of our overall health, may it be physical, emotional, mental, or sexual health. That's why we are happy to welcome two health advocates in guiding others in achieving their optimal health with the use of technology. Beyond the Birds and Bees project manager, Jessica McQuoid is an advocate for community empowerment and quality relationships and sexuality education. From journalism to fitness instructing to life as a pastry chef, Jessica is now following her passion to health education and health promotion. Jessica currently works in sexual violence prevention as a health educator in high schools and has recently been involved in a mentoring program to get advice on how to manage a startup business. Youthlight Auckland Charitable Trust Helpline Counselor Kate Menting is a passionate advocate for the health and well-being of others. She founded the idea of Beyond the Bees and Birds and Bees through her master's degree in technological futures, which she completed in 2021. Kate currently works as an impact and insight lead in a social innovation team at a large Maori Indigenous New Zealander organization in Auckland, New Zealand. Watch our pre-recorded live stream as we discuss topics and tips on becoming health advocates of our community. Let's hack the future. Let's start with Jessica. I'm fascinated by your role. What exactly a job of quality relationships and sexuality education requires?
Well, so when we talk about relationships and sexuality education, we're not just talking about sex education. So that's been the traditional way to go about teaching these topics, is to just teach young people how to stay safe when they're having sex, how to use contraception, that sort of thing. But these days we're moving away from that, and we're trying to include things like healthy relationships, why consent is really important, and not just in a sexual situation, how to have good friendships, healthy communication, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it really is teaching from a holistic perspective, rather than really focusing on that biological or physical aspect of sexual health. So yeah, that's the main goal as a health educator in this space.
Well, you actually corrected me because we were planning to have this topic of sex education, and you told me, let's have a conversation about sexuality education. So tell us briefly what is the difference between sex and sexuality education.
Yeah. So when we talk about sex education, like I said before, it's focused just on the biological or the physical. So it's really focused on two bodies and what happens during sex and how to keep safe, from STIs, and unwanted pregnancy, that sort of thing. But when we move into relationships and sexuality education, it's a lot more than that. And we sort of move away from focusing on two bodies to having two people or more than two people, and how those people interact in a healthy way. The reason why it's so important, especially from a New Zealand perspective, is we've got quite high rates of things like domestic violence and dating violence, which is domestic violence but happening between younger people. So our young people are really needing to be able to be empowered with education that's going to teach them how to have a healthy relationship. So not just focused on that sex side of things, but how to interact well with each other, how to talk about things, how to communicate effectively. And yeah, that's sort of the big difference. So if I say in the conversation RSE, because sometimes I'll shorten it, that just stands for Relationships and Sexuality Education. So just to keep everyone in the loop.
It's a very interesting dynamic. Let's move into Kate. So how did it inspire you to create this fascinating title, and where was the idea coming from?
Yeah, so the idea sort of started through my master's degree, and the degree was looking at, I guess, how you can use technology to support some sort of issue or a business idea. And for me, sexuality education had always been something that I was interested in and sort of passionate about. And then through my research in the master's degree, I sort of came across a lot of information and research around the sexuality education that people in New Zealand are receiving, and the way that young people aren't necessarily getting the education that they are needing through schools and not necessarily at home either. And so that the idea of Beyond the Birds and the Bees, I guess, as a title, as a project, was looking at how I guess the topic, as Jess has already spoken about, goes beyond young people being taught about just, I guess, the birds and the bees, but looking at young people being empowered with information about relationships and about consent and about, social media and those kind of things. So the idea kind of started around that, and then talking to young people about how they wanted to be engaged in that kind of, that's sort of where it all started from, really.
And how do kids react to talk about sexuality? Is it still giggles, or is there more openness and maturity there?
I think it's probably a bit of both, actually. So through my master's, I did interviews and sort of focus groups and things with young people, and there was sort of, obviously giggles and from some of the younger people, but then also I guess a need as well, and like a real invested interest around like discussing and speaking about topics that I think they haven't always been able or been open to speaking about. So I think for a lot of young people, it was actually like I think they were really engaged in actually wanting to speak about those things, because they haven't always been given the opportunity in school or at home and things like that. So it's a bit of both, but it's definitely a topic that is becoming more and more spoken about openly here, I think.
Jessica, why we need relationships and sexuality education? It is not enough to just teach safe sex anymore?
No, like I said before, in New Zealand, we've got quite a big issue around domestic violence, having quite high statistics in domestic violence, and especially dating violence and sexual violence occurring between younger people. So when they start dating and they start entering into relationships and they're not too sure what's healthy and what's not, and then they're getting in situations where they don't necessarily have the knowledge and the skills to keep themselves and their partner or whoever they're with safe. So I think it's really important to be teaching around the relationship side of things and how we interact as human beings, and move away. Obviously, we still do teach around the safe sex, because that's always going to be important, but it's really moving away from that a little bit and looking at the bigger picture. So as I said before, looking at it more holistically and moving away from just that real physical or biological lens that we've had on sort of this area of education for a long time. And yeah, just adding to what Kate said before, young people, I feel like we don't give them enough credit for how much they actually want to know about this. They do want to learn this stuff. And I think traditionally we've kind of tried to protect young people, and we don't want to sort of tell them too much in case they go off and start relationships really young or things like that. But like I said before, it's not always looking at romantic relationships. Like, young people can learn how to have really healthy friendships or really good relationships with family members. So it's not always in that sexual sort of like sexual space. And I think that's where our thinking needs to change a bit. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
I'm fascinated. Going back to the beginning of creating that idea, Kate, can you tell me, you had an idea in mind, you were working on the helpline, and then what? What did you decide to do?
Yeah, so I think originally when I first started the masters, or the kind of I guess the ideation sort of stage, I did a lot of research into, I guess, like regarding technologies, what young people engage, like how young people engage in technology. So like did sort of surveys and spoke to young people around, are they interested in like websites, texting, videos, like what kind of like medias, I guess, are they actually are they engaging in, and how we could best support them like through something they would actually want to use. So the idea originally started through that conversation, and then speaking to young people, and also a lot of research as well around what young people are using on their day-to-day, and that was where the idea of the app actually came from. I sort of, when I first started, there was kind of young people use their phones, but also I wasn't quite sure if that was going to be the best option. But when the research was done and speaking to the young people, it sort of came out that was the main thing that young people are regularly engaging with, and that's easy to access as well, because that's a big part of this, is that we want the outcome to be that young people are able to access it wherever they want. So an app is something most people carry their phones with them, so it's something that they can easily just open and access straight away without the barrier of needing a computer or needing to watch a video or something like that always.
I'll tell you more. Actually, there is a proof that nowadays it used to be like people after having sex would reach to their to have a smoke. Now they are reaching to their phone to see what is the update. So it's very good. So have you created the app, or is it in the process? What stage is your company now?
So we're still in the very early stages. So we're just beginning to develop the app. So the very basic level of development. So we've got some app developers who are doing that sort of stuff, because myself, and I think I can speak for Kate too, we're not 100% sure how that all works. So we're kind of leaving that up to them. And then Kate and myself and another colleague, Tracy, we're working to develop the content. So what's going to actually feature on the app. So at the moment, that's sort of the big task. But yeah, no, nothing has been created as of yet. But we're really hoping by sort of late this year that we'll have at least the first version ready to go. But yeah, at the moment, it's I don't know if we'll talk about this later on, but because we're running the business as a social enterprise, we're sort of relying on being funded along the way. So yeah, we're just working with what we've got at the moment, but so far so good. It looks like we're going to make good progress, but yeah.
So the MVP is going to be built sometime at the end of the year. In the meantime, you're looking for funding. What kind of funding are you trying to achieve?
So far, for a bit of background, we've got last year we won an innovation award, which was through the university. So we're working out of the University of Canterbury at the moment, which is in Christchurch in the South Island of New Zealand. So we won an award through that. And then I think it was actually the end of last week, we got some more funding from an organisation called Pegasus Health, which is quite a big health organisation here in New Zealand. And we've also applied for some research grants, because as part of this project, we want to have the research running alongside of it to kind of back up what we're doing. So we're that's another colleague of ours, Tracy, who I mentioned just before. She's kind of she's what would you say, managing all of that and looking out for where we can apply for funding and different grants and things like that. But at the moment it's still very much a work in progress.
As a social enterprise owner, I have to ask you, what are the pros and cons of starting a social enterprise?
I think
maybe let's start with Kate.
Sorry, I was like, Jesus. I guess, well, for us, I think, as Jess mentioned, the funding thing, like we've had, some solid, I guess the research that was originally done, and the ideas and the time to do it. It's just actually getting the money to be able to continue to fund and having ongoing funding to be able to support the project to keep going, because obviously things like app development and things, they're not cheap, and you need somebody who has the expertise and the know-how to actually make it. And we want to make it and make it good so that young people actually want to use it and continue to use it. So we want to do it once and do it right. I think for us, that's been the hardest thing, is actually finding funding that we can get, that is secure, and that we can then move forward to keep on building the product.
I guess it's not an easy task. You have to also involve different stakeholders. You mentioned University of Canterbury. You mentioned research grants. There is a lot of maneuvering going on. And is there any chance for sponsors as well, Jessica?
Yeah, that's something we are looking into at the moment. I'm not sure if Pegasus Health may potentially become a sponsor. We don't know, fingers crossed. But yeah, that's something that we're looking into more, but I can't quite talk too much to that. Like I say, our colleague Tracy is probably the mind behind all of that. But yeah, that's definitely how we plan to kind of keep the project going. Because like Kate said, we want to develop a good a good app, but we also, in the future, we want to keep updating what's on the app, and we want to make it refresh it as it goes along, so young people are coming back to it and it doesn't just sort of become dead in the water after a year or 2 years. So yeah, we are hoping to get sponsorship or something like that, so we can keep the app funded essentially, and so it can keep making impact, because that's the main goal.
That's the main goal, to keep doing it and also not be discouraged about lack of funds. So is it generating some money for you? I mean, or are you still doing it as a side job and hustling while you have a steady job? Kate?
So for me at the moment, I work another job full time. So I work in like a Māori health organisation doing sort of impact and innovation stuff. And then for me, this at the moment is on the side, like it's more of a passion project and something that I hope in the future will be able to become more of like a regular thing. However, at the moment, we're not, it's not really making money as such. It's just more in the starting phases.
I guess it's very difficult to keep doing what you're doing without being just giving up. Jessica, how do you keep your positivity hack?
I think I'm much like Kate. I have a huge passion for what we're doing. So alongside this work, I think it was mentioned in the little brief bio, but I also work in high schools here in New Zealand, and I run different sessions around, it's in the sexual violence prevention space, but it's teaching around the topics we've spoken about before, healthy relationships, consent, communication, all that sort of stuff. So I have a real passion for this, and I do hear from my students that I teach that they want to be able to access the information that we are sharing with them, but they want to be able to access that outside of the classroom. So rather than us having to go there each week and they have to wait for each session to find out what they need, they want sort of a localized place where they can go and get whatever they're after whenever they need it or wherever they are, like Kate said earlier. So yeah, I think for me it's the passion that really drives me, and it is tricky at times and it does seem quite overwhelming because it is such a big project, and like you say, with the funding and We don't know where things are going to be in a few months, and COVID makes it difficult. And sometimes it does get a bit overwhelming, but I think, for all of us, we're really passionate. So I think that's a big strength of all of ours.
Well, I have to mention my great role model, a woman I always like to follow. She's actually building a platform for Make Love Not Porn. It's called, and it's been built many years ago by Cindy Gallop. And she says every single value you are teaching your child in life generally can be applied to how they should think about their sex lives and their love lives. Kate, I was wondering, how is it dealing during COVID with the helpline changed? Has it changed in general? Is there different problems people are having?
I think COVID, for a lot of people as well, like in New Zealand, we have experienced, and similar across the world, I guess, but we've experienced lots of, long lockdowns, particularly where I live in Auckland. We had about sort of just over 3 months where we were all pretty much had to stay at home. And for young people, I think that was a really hard time for some young people being at home. Some of them weren't able to go to school for quite a while, and not being able to connect with friends and things. So there was definitely a large amount of the call volume during lockdown increased significantly, as well as the texting. And I think that is due to the fact of people not being able to have that face-to-face communication, and also being at home dealing with whānau, or like family stresses and things like that as well. So it's definitely had a huge impact.
Since the outbreak of COVID-19, emerging data and reports from those on the front lines have shown that all types of violence against women and girls, particularly domestic violence, has intensified. This is the shadow pandemic growing amongst the COVID-19 crisis, and we need a global collective effort to stop it. It's being defined by United Nations as shadow pandemic campaign. And I'm wondering whether your project is really focusing on New Zealand, or are you planning to go globally as well?
I think at the moment we're just going to keep it small and focus on New Zealand. We really, there are a few other projects similar to what we're trying to do. I know there's a website in the Netherlands that kind of is aligning with the things we're trying to do, and Australia actually released an app last year, but it was just based on information around sexual health. But what we want to do is we want to create an app that's really specific to New Zealand. So it's been mentioned a few times already, but we have Māori, who are the Indigenous people of our country, and then non-Māori. So for us, that bicultural element is really crucial. So all the information that's going to be on the app is going to represent both worldviews, because we know with sexuality it's really complex. And then when you add things in like cultural factors and different societal factors, it becomes even more complex. So yeah, I think to begin with, we really want to cater to New Zealand, but that's not to say that this project isn't going to blow up in the best way possible and get really big, and then we can potentially turn it into maybe a website, or not too sure yet. But yeah, at the moment we're focused on catering for New Zealand.
Kate, I wanted to ask you, because I think we still have got the concept, no matter which culture we are talking about, we have a concept of we need to teach our girls how to protect themselves. We still do not teach boys how to behave well. Is that the case in New Zealand as well, or have you seen different examples, different approach?
I think it's probably, as Jess has sort of mentioned, I think, and it's sort of where this whole project really started from as well, is young people here, a lot of young people aren't, boys, girls, sort of everyone are not, in New Zealand, aren't necessarily getting sexuality education, getting relationship education. And so, I mean, we don't necessarily know what people are getting, but I mean, as Jess has mentioned a few times, the statistics here don't always paint a good picture. And I think it's men, it's women, it's everybody in between, like not being able to necessarily have that education. And that's sort of, the reason that the app came around.
Right. Jessica, what would you say to a mother of a teenager or even early age? Uh, what is the perfect age to talk about sexuality?
Oh, good question. So we're targeting the app for around 13 years old to up to 24. So that's when we say young people, that's kind of the age range. But really, the research is showing that these conversations need to happen in primary school. I'm not sure if you call it primary, but we're talking around starting around age 5 and up. Because like I said before, it's not just, I think people get a little bit confused, or there's a little bit of fear in there that we're going to teach young people, young children about sex and things like that. And that's just not the case. When we're talking about relationships and sexuality education, it's about having good friendships. It's about creating that foundation.
There is, don't worry, it's not a police for sexuality. Okay, continue, please.
So dramatic. It's not about teaching around sex and sex education, for young children. It's teaching around how to interact in a safe way and in a healthy way with each other, be that a friend, be that a teacher at school, a parent, a sibling. It's just those like life skills that I think it's really been underestimated, how important they are. And it's kind of been left up to sort of this process of trial and error, that as you grow up and you meet different people and you just learn these things, but that's not necessarily the case. And I think if we had this kind of information and we're able to build these kind of skills, like simple communication skills from a young age, I think we'd be much better off. So yeah, definitely from a young age, but it would have to be appropriate to the age.
Definitely, because there are so many resources that young people are reaching out to. Let's say, for example, all the porn platforms are definitely not a good source of information, and the great ambassador for safe sex and good sexual values, Cindy Gallop says, because we as a society don't talk about sex, we default it to an act, to a thing we do. It's not. Sex is personality. Sex is a fundamental part of our humanity. It's a fundamental part of how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about other people, our relationships, our lives, our happiness. Would you agree with that, Kate?
I would agree with that. I love that. I love that quote, and that's so true. And that's what this whole thing is trying to encapsulate, is that it's not just one thing that just sits over here. It's a broader topic that needs to be discussed and that needs to be explored. So I fully agree with that.
Great. Jessica, from your experience, how is the youngsters behaving during these sessions? Do they have some knowledge, or is it just still kind of hidden under the bushes and not really knowing what to do?
No, absolutely. They have a lot of knowledge, and I feel like we don't give them credit for just how switched on they are with these kind of things. For me, what I've noticed is that young people know a lot about what it means to have a healthy relationship. So they have that knowledge, but they're kind of lacking a wee bit in the skills. So to give a bit of context to that, at the end of every session, we have an anonymous question box, and the students can put in questions that they want answered in the next session to follow. And we get a lot of questions from young people around how to deal with things like control and abuse in their relationships. So even though they have the knowledge about what's healthy and not so healthy in a relationship, it's still, there's kind of a disconnect there. So again, as much as they know about perhaps the sex side of things, or they've seen things on the internet, like you say, with pornography, which is an issue in itself, there's not so much knowledge in how to manage these sort of like interpersonal issues, I suppose.
Right. So let's talk about the COVID behaviors and the problem with sexual violence. Is there any prevention that your government is doing at the moment, or is it just kind of trying to deal with on a daily basis?
Oh, big question. So I probably can't speak to everything that's going on. The program that I work for is sort of a government funded program. But we do know that later in the year, a whole new strategy to address sexual violence is coming out, but we don't know any information about that yet. So yeah, I'm probably not, I don't have a lot of information on that to share with you. Yeah, I'm not sure if Kate has anything to add to that, but yeah.
Yeah, Kate, I'm interested about your helpline. Is there some evidence of government actually chipping in and trying to help victims?
I'm actually probably on the same. Jess, I would have said, is probably more working in the space around this. And as she mentioned, I think the main thing that I know of, obviously, like during lockdown and things here, that sexual violence has been, and domestic violence in general has increased significantly. And that is a problem that the government has, it has come out and the government has, I think it's been highlighted. But as far as what's being done about it, apart from the what Jess mentioned earlier, that's the only thing that I know at the moment that's happening. There could be other things happening though, but just not that I've seen.
All right. I know you ladies are very busy with building your app and juggling job as well. So tell me, how do you build an app without technical knowledge?
You rely on great people who know what they're doing. No, so the app developers that are on our team were ex-graduates of the University of Canterbury. So it's really been a huge collaborative project. So we've kind of drawn everyone in with who has the different skills in different areas. So yeah, like I was saying, they really take charge of that and are very tech savvy people, and then we just let them do their thing. So yeah, that's pretty much how we've gone about it. Kate, do you agree?
Kate?
Yeah. I think I have a passion for and an interest in learning about technology, which is the reason I originally did the master's. Things like an app. I've supported website builds before, and I'm interested in the sort of user experience side of things. But the actual build itself has definitely been the app developers that are just going forward with that. And we're there to support it, with how we want it to look and things, but the actual coding behind it, they're doing that.
So you decided to build a product, you decided to launch the campaign. You have a website along with that. Who built the website? Is it also your developers, or did you build it yourself? Jessica? Or Kate?
Sorry, I think I might have. The website, I've supported one with work, which is like a separate, that's more, I've just supported website development in the past about a different topic. So I have the interest in understanding around how to do that. But for this particular project, we haven't built a website yet, although hopefully that will come in the future.
Yay! Jessica?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
No, I was just going to add that I didn't know we had a website, but yeah, no, Kate clarified that. Yeah, it's just the app at this stage.
And how did you find ladies yourself? I mean, how did you build a team? Because I guess it's quite difficult to build a team around this very touchy topic, isn't it, Jessica?
Yeah, so like Kate was saying, it started from her master's project. So her and the other colleague I've been speaking about, Tracy, were kind of working together. I think Kate can probably speak more to this after I've answered. But they were kind of working together, and Kate's based up in Auckland. Tracy and myself are based down in Christchurch at the university. So Kate and Tracy were sort of doing their thing. And then at the end of last year, I finished my degree in health sciences. And Tracy was actually one of my main lecturers in my degree. So I had known her over the past 3 years. And she just mentioned the project to me and mentioned what Kate had done with her master's project, and asked me if I wanted to join the team and manage the project for this year. So yeah, I think it was just having really great connections with people in the field, and we were really lucky to be able to have the three of us now working on this and having all the experience and the knowledge and learning from each other. So, yeah.
Kate, why are you so passionate for the health and well-being of others? Was there some previous experience you had, or what dragged you into that passion?
I think it's just always been something I've been passionate at. Like, so when I was younger, I always grew up thinking I would want to be sort of like a nurse or something. I don't know. I think I just love people and like helping people, like supporting people. And then I did a health sciences degree as well, so the same one as what Jess did. And I think for me, and now in my work that I do as well, is just the importance of people and like relationship building and seeing other people flourish and thrive is sort of, I think, what I guess builds me up or like fills my heart. So it's a really great space to work in, because I feel like you go home every day feeling like you've made some kind of a difference in somebody else's life. And so that's why.
And then you stepped into the world of entrepreneurship, ladies. You didn't have any experience before. How was it for you, Jessica?
It was overwhelming, to say the least. It's a very new world for me to be in. I have very much been in the academic space and the research space for a number of years. So to step into the entrepreneurial world was quite daunting. So I took this project into a mentoring program that they were running in the university over the summer. And I think there was around about 23 different business ventures that got chosen to be in this project. And I was one of the very few who came in with a social enterprise, which was quite, what would you call it, intimidating, I guess. So you have all these big ventures which are trying to make, a lot of money and profit and all this sort of thing. And we're just there with our little social enterprise. So yeah, it was tricky. And not having the knowledge was pretty intimidating as well. But it's been great so far, and we're just learning as we go, really, and just asking for help where we need it. I think that's the biggest thing, is just not to feel like you have to know everything entering into the space, and just connect with the people that you can and that are going to give you a hand when you need it.
Well, there is a background information that is necessary here, and good, great mentor, I think, who I met when I was in Berlin in 2014, Miho Tanaka, who is actually our joint contact, ladies. Mm-hmm. Is she also involved in the project, or is she more on the, advisory side?
Not so much. So we met Miho probably, I don't know, a couple months ago now, through another colleague at the university had mentioned our project, and then Miho met with us and we caught up with her about what we were doing. But no, as for what we're doing now, Miho's not really involved, no.
Right. I recommend reaching out to Miho. Sorry for the noise. Right, let's go back to the importance of working directly with the communities. What's the plan? How did you build the strategy for such an important topic, sexuality education? Kate?
Yeah, Kate, do you want to?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? Sorry, I got the first part of it.
Sorry about that. So, you mentioned that you are working directly with communities. How did you build a strategy? How you're going to approach communities, and what's the plan there?
Yeah, well, we know, from experience and from research as well, that, to get the best outcomes and to have the best product, that we need to work with the people who the app or who the product is supposed to serve. So for me in my work as well, that's a huge part of what I do otherwise as well, is actually communicating with the people, with whānau, and talking to them about their needs, and then going from there as far as the product. So for us, I think we've kind of built into our plan, I guess, or our strategy around the first part of, before actually diving fully into the content and fully into exactly how the app is going to be, we're wanting to talk to the community, talk to the young people, and actually, I guess, pinpoint for them the key things that they want to learn about. So yeah, we're intending to do hopefully focus groups and interviews and things like that, which can then, collaborate on the things that are actually key so that the young people are engaged and that they're actually getting the information that they want rather than the information we think that they want, which may not actually be as relevant as we think it is. So I think it is completely key in any kind of product like this.
Oh,
sorry, through this noise of the morning in Valletta, I'm trying to have a good conversation so you can hear me well. Jessica, would you like to add something to that strategy building for working grassroots organization, really?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so for our project, especially what I'm doing now with coordinating the content development, it's been key trying to connect with different health organisations here in New Zealand, as well as young people. So yeah, for us, using the information that's out there, the expertise that these organisations have in this space is really key for us and collaboration is everything. So we never intended this project to involve us just sitting in an office alone doing our work and then here you go, here's an app, job done. It's really about working with the people that are there that can help us. And like Kate said, going to young people, we intend to go to schools, also access groups outside of schools, and ask them if it's what they want. Do they want something different? Test that the app is actually working in the way that they would like. Otherwise, there's really, in my eyes anyway, there's really no point to do it if we just base everything off what we want to produce, because then you're not likely to have the greatest impact. So yeah, for us, it's about connections and just about being genuine with what we're doing and following through with our aim.
Genuine is very important, as well as I think there is another quotation by Cindy Gallop. Nobody ever brings up to behave well in bed, but they should, because there is empathy, sensitivity, generosity, kindness, honesty are as important as they are in every other of our lives and our work, where we are actively taught to exercise those values. Do you teach honesty in bed as well, or is it part of your strategy? What is the main focus of your project?
You go, Kate.
We're actually still working on the content. I think that's a really good point, though, is like we're part of the app as well is we're looking to open up conversations around sex, not just being part of it. I think it's a big taboo topic often, and we're trying to open up the conversation around sex being something that is not just done for reproductive reasons. It's not just done for these particular reasons, but actually it's a thing that is also something that's normal, that's practiced, and that people, teaching around pleasure and things like that as well. So I think that will be a big part of the discussion. I just think we're trying to work out things around how we can include things in here that will still be appropriate for particular ages that are using it too. Jess might be able to speak more to that because she's been working more on the content recently than I have, but it's definitely a consideration.
Jess?
Yeah, definitely. Communication is a key part of sexual activity in general. And I think that's one thing that's overlooked is how do you actually talk to your partner about what you want or what you don't want, what your boundaries are, even contraception, even in going back in my day when I was in school and we just had sex education and the teacher would tell you what contraceptives were out there. There was never the discussion around, well, okay, but how do you discuss contraception and what you may use with your partner? There was none of that. So yeah, like that quote you brought up about having the honesty and the kindness and generosity, that's key. So that will definitely be in the content. It may not be explicitly mentioned like in the quote, but it's a huge underpinning for all of that.
We have quotations added to our banners, ladies and gentlemen. Cindy Gallop, go follow her. She's a great advocate for good relationship and good sex, not porn. She's pro sex, pro porn, pro knowing the difference, as Cindy Gallop mentions. So let's talk about the difference between what was sexual education, sexuality education before, and where you see it going towards. Jessica.
Oh, so like I say, if I talk from my own experience at high school, all I remember is one of my teachers, I don't even think they were a health teacher. It was just one of my teachers who was assigned to teach the health class, came in and showed a video about I don't even remember what it was, but some really outdated video. And then we learned about contraception, STIs, all that factual information, and that was kind of it. I don't remember anything about relationships or how to have healthy relationships. I don't even remember consent, which is quite problematic in many ways. So definitely today we're moving away from that, and I think we've progressed a huge amount. In New Zealand, we have relationships and sexuality education being added into the health curriculum for schools. So there's a lot more guidance for teachers, especially around how to teach about these topics, which is awesome. I'm really happy to see that. So hopefully that makes a big difference. But yeah, I think, like I say, it's that total shift in perspective around it being a holistic approach. And also that sexuality isn't just about sexual orientation. And I think sometimes those two terms have been used interchangeably over the years. But yeah, like I say, it's everything: relationships, communications. It's how we interact as human beings. So you can literally take the sex out of it at some point and just think about that.
Kate, what about your education? How is it different? How is it different from long ago?
Similar to Jess, actually. I think, back being at school, I actually did health as a subject, which my health education wasn't too bad. I think I probably was on the slightly better end of what I've heard stories of other people. I was speaking to some people tonight who were saying, the things that they learned at school are like half of the things weren't even true, which is concerning. So I think, we are, as a nation, I think we are opening up a little bit. Conversations are opening up around, sex and sexuality, but I think it is a really slow thing, and particularly in schools. I think the actual education that is happening it has a way to go. And I think hopefully the new curriculum will continue to build that in there, but hopefully this app can kind of be the support for that while it's still continuing to grow, because it's not where it should be. And I think a lot of young people are left, looking to porn or looking to the internet for the education that they need, which is not ideal. So,
well, I'm going to show you my age now by telling that we didn't even have a topic of sexual education. In communist Poland, you did not talk about that at all. It was all bees and birds and bees for me, definitely. My mother would tell me that I was born in the in the cabbage. So there you go. So, talking about consent, ladies, I'm wondering, is there a good way to encourage consent? I know that there is, for example, ideas about building an app which will be a consent. It adds a bit of sophistication into the topic, right? Because when you're in the hype, in the moment, you don't really think about clicking on the app. Yes, I consent to having this relationship, and during sex something might go awry. What would be your approach, Jessica?
So if I speak from how we teach consent in the program that I do, so there's sort of 4 crucial components. So it's thinking about what you want as a person, then considering what the other person wants. And I think that's been quite a big shift, because it's not just considering yourself, and you have the responsibility to consider the other person. And the third one that sort of links in with that is checking in with the person. So we always say that even if you give consent to something in the beginning, you can always take that back. If you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, you have the right to reverse your consent. So yeah, checking in with people or the person that you're with. And then, like you said, if you've been in a situation where maybe you didn't consent or the other person didn't, and you're kind of reflecting on that, we have sort of the last part, I guess, in that process, which is thinking about it. So it's that self-reflection and thinking, okay, maybe I was in that situation and I didn't consent, or I didn't get the other person's consent, and that wasn't so good. But reflecting on that and thinking how in the next situation you could maybe improve, or make sure that you do get that consent. So that's sort of the key process that we talk about, and also that it's not just hearing the word yes. I know that's talked about a lot in consent education, that as long as you get the word yes from the other person, then that's consent. While that is a good start, it's body language, it's making sure that the other person is actually comfortable and they're not just saying yes because they feel that they have to. It's there's a lot to teach around it, and that's a huge part of what I do. We do an entire session with our students just on consent. So
Yeah.
I think I'll stop there.
It's a very important topic. I guess it's also quite difficult for somebody who's never experienced to be in that situation. And I guess, Kate, you have to talk about different people's experience and really teach them how to behave in case something happens. How is it for you?
Yeah, I think, and that's a big part of, I guess, that's probably a big part of the work that Jess does, and what we hope to include in the app as well, is giving people, I guess, tools that they can have in their belt that they can then understand, the different situations that they may be put in, or the different situations that can arise, and how they can deal with those different things. And that is a big part of being an adult, and consent and relationships in general as well.
We have a few last few minutes left of our show. We've talked about sexuality education, the importance of talking about honesty in bed. I would like to go into the question of life lesson quote. Jessica, can you tell us what is your life lesson quote, and how did it change you in the past?
Yes. So I wrote mine down just so I didn't forget it. And it is, if you get tired, learn to rest, not to quit. So for me, I'm very much a perfectionist, and I get quite frustrated sometimes when I can't see a tangible result. So this project is a huge example of that it's going to take time to develop our app, and it's going to take time to connect with people and develop the content. And I do notice sometimes I get frustrated because I want to see something, like I want to see a product or see that I'm working towards something, achieving something. But I guess just learning, like the quote says, when you get tired, just take a step back, just reassess, it's okay. There's no need to quit. I think that's a big one for me, just being able to breathe, because it does get overwhelming. And like I say, it's a totally new area for me, at least, being in this space. So that's,
What about you, Kate? What is your life lesson quote?
For me, something I guess I don't have necessarily a life lesson quote, but more of in New Zealand, as Jess mentioned before, we had like Māori, the Indigenous people of New Zealand, and whakatauki is like a big part of their cultural the way that they speak, and so a proverb it's something that kind of resonates with me, which is Mauri tu, Mauri ora, and that's an active soul is a healthy soul. So for me, that's sort of around, I guess being active, and whether that's physically active, learning, growing myself, challenging myself, and things like that. And that's kind of what keeps me healthy. And I think for my whole life, I've kind of tried to keep myself learning and keep myself busy and keep pushing on. So that's probably my biggest life lesson quote.
And let's face it, when you focus on the positives get more positive. We are heading to the end of our show. I wanted to ask you, ladies, let's start with Jessica first. Imagine the pandemic is over and you can invite any person in the world to have private breakfast anywhere in the world. Who would you choose, and where would you go to?
Oh, mine's going to be very localized to New Zealand. I would bring Kate down to Christchurch, because as we've been working on this project, we still haven't been able to meet in person because of COVID. So it'd be really awesome to actually see each other in person and have some time to chill. So yeah, I would do that. Mine's not amazing. It's not a big celebrity. Oh no, not Kate. Not that you're not amazing.
And where?
Love it.
And where?
Yeah, probably just Christchurch, or I would go up there to Auckland. It wouldn't bother me.
Excellent. Kate, what about you?
We can fly over to Bali or somewhere, Jess.
Oh yeah. I need a dream bigger.
For me, I would love to see Jess as well. But I actually, someone who's always inspired me, and I think it's just growing up, I've always loved animals and loved the environment. So David Attenborough for me would be probably my person that I would love to meet and just hear about his life and, goals and how some support for the future, what we can do, obviously with global warming and things like that as well. And I would choose to meet him somewhere remote, tropical, where the animals are, and just, that's dreaming of getting away somewhere nice.
Oh, absolutely. This is very important for your sexuality education as well, to be able to dream. Right. Let's ask Jessica, what is a number one book you can sit and think, oh, I wish I read it before I started my project?
Oh, a book. Gosh. I actually don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna throw that one to Kate. I don't know.
Okay, Kate. What's the number one book you recommend to everybody?
I would probably say I have usually sort of read a book, and I very much like to change it up. But one book that I think for me it was a really foundational book, and it's probably in my area that I've worked in as well, is called Whai Ora, and it's by a Māori, very esteemed Māori man over here called Sir Mason Jury, and it looks at sort of Māori health and foundational, aspirational, and also I guess socioeconomic kind of determinants of health. And I think it's just a really cool book that encapsulates a lot of sort of New Zealand sort of history around Māori and health. So I would recommend that to anyone in the health space.
Excellent. Katie, I hope you're going to help us with defining the title of the book. In the meantime, I would like to thank everybody for joining us. This is pre-recorded session. We want to avoid any sexual comments happening, but also we cannot have it live because when we usually host our talk live at 6 p.m., it is already past midnight in New Zealand. Now, let's join us next week on the how to build an outstanding personal brand topic with our special guest Tamika Bickham. And I would like to thank Jessica and Kate for a lovely conversation about sexuality. The best contraceptive in the world is a good education, as Jocelyn Elder says, and good health is not something we can buy. However, it can be an extremely valuable savings account, as Annie Wilson-Chef says. Thank you very much, Jessica and Kate, for joining us today. When you focus on the positive, the positives get more positive. And as always, our positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. Today is your day to hug the future, hug the positivity you want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.